I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
That's Booby.
And Jelpy and Ghosty and Chip.
A Night in Texas. I've never heard of this band before.
I know.
Name of the song is Warborn. There are multiple ways to get a song that you're interested in review the old school way. Remember it was like if you get a person to sub?
Yeah, we had to stop saying that. I'm like, shut up, stop saying that. There's too many subs rolling in.
I was like, whoa, hey, look at you get a person to sub, then we'll do your video.
Yeah. People were like, I got a person to sub. Where's my video?
I might do that. Once we're like completely caught up, I might say, you know, the first person where I get an email that says so-and-so suggested I sub to your channel, da-da-da-da. But anyway, so there's that.
I'd put it right in the comment section, the first one in the comment section.
Yep.
Be
There's
quick.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those ways of contacting us. And then the most efficient way is the alliances. But if you want to do, you know, like in Disney, you know, where you'd be able to jump in front of, or you'd rent out
Fast
the park.
pass.
Fast park.
I am a fast pass person.
Yeah, you can rent out the park for the whole night. That's what this is. $75 partner tier. This is the big homie My Insanity. Mm-hmm. And there's a band called A Night in Texas.
This song is called Warborn.
From the album Global Slaughter.
This song is 2 minutes and 36 seconds. I'm like, how can you do a song in 2 minutes and 36 seconds? So I'm super curious to see what this is going to be.
It seems like they're just going to hit it right out the gate.
They're going to have to.
Warborn. It sounds like Global Slaughter. It sounds like there's probably going to be some political undertones. And having said that, for timely topical political commentary, you can hit us up in Middle America with Vin and Sori. By this time, inshallah, you should have seen Sori's debut.
My mini Middle America.
Her solo MA debut.
You know what's funny? Somebody was saying, oh, basically they can't wait to see my video where I'm going to be basically like acting like you, but being me.
Yeah, the Vinisms.
Yeah, but then I was like, I cut a lot of those out. When I clipped the video, I'm like, that's too much like Vin. Clip, clip, clip.
Yep.
I've been told I don't think for myself. It's very annoying.
Shout out to the big homie Steven De Herrera.
No,
big
he's
homie.
Not the one that said I don't think for myself.
No, he's not the one. He's not the one. You know, all these. No, I'm not gonna get into that. Shout out to De Herrera.
Let's start this.
Bro, I was gonna move to Arizona.
He was, but I said no.
Arizona's on my short list to live, and you were one of the main reasons why. And then he goes and moves to Colorado.
Oh,
Colorado
really?
is not on my list.
I was not good with Arizona.
Unacceptable.
Rocks in my yard rather than green? No. Mm-mm. Ready?
Well, you're such a baby.
Go.
in and out.
Yeah.
Move.
Okay, listen. Stop. This is never, ever, ever in my life going to get old for me. I don't care if you're going to say, that's been done a million times before, whatever. I am never going to get sick of them doing this. You feel like you're getting sucked away, and then it's like, boom, you get pushed down that tunnel. I will never get tired of that. I love that in every song I listen to. I actually feel like I go somewhere, like on some sort of a ride. Like I'm like, I love it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have different? I loved this song. This was like was like great for me.
Yeah,
how was it for you?
It's a gym song. For sure.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah.
Sonically, I'm glad we had the lyrics right in front of us because we would have had no idea what the hell these boys were talking about.
No, not at all. Not at all.
You know, I just think about Afghanistan. You know, born in a horrific war-torn society, brainwashed from birth, fed views of belief. Before they can even speak, appalling third world conditions, a beautiful world they cannot envision. You know, there is this very, like, it was like the most iconic photo in the last 40 years of this Afghani girl. I showed it to you one time.
The one with the eyes?
With the eyes.
Yeah.
And they did like a re-up with her. And she basically said she was offended that people were like sorry for her or whatever.
Oh, really?
She's like, she basically said, I like my life. Like,
really?
I like my life here and yada yada yada.
But she was so different.
But you know, it was, you know, that's the picture right there, you know. And so like she's like, you guys are
she looks terrifying. Is that her?
Yeah, that's her right there. Like that's
okay, so there's a before and there's the after.
Yeah. And
she's saying at this point in the after that she likes her life?
Well, yeah. And my thing is like, look, at the time of the take, I like this version of it. At the time of the taking of that picture, and look, I mean, this is just a standard hijab. This looks like a niqab that covers the top parts of her hair, but I'm sure if her hair was out and all the rest of it, she would still look very beautiful. But, you know, it was very eye-opening to me because, you know, the Russians, I think that at the time of the 1985 National Geographic photo, there you go, Afghan girls arrested. Should click on that shit.
Where?
Click on it.
Arrested?
Yeah,
1985? That was the year I was born.
She's arrested in Pakistan.
Do you think that they filtered her eyes?
No.
Or that her eyes changed that much over that amount of time?
No, I just think it was just the angle. I mean, her eyes look pretty much the same to me. It's
no,
just
they don't.
It's just a
There's
camera
like
angle.
orange and green in that, and this does not look like that.
Yeah. We raided the house and picked her up. It took us a while to collect all the evidence against her and the officials involved helping her two sons get Pakistani national identity cards. Fraudulently obtaining identity cards so that she got arrested. But basically, she was basically saying, you know, I like my life here, yada, yada, yada. Like, you guys, you know, we didn't need you guys to save us. But it was in 1985. That was when the Russians were invading, and then the Mujahideen went and fought them back, and yada, yada, yada. And it was kind of like she was used kind of like as a propaganda. Like, look at what these horrible Russians are doing to these poor Afghani people. And meanwhile, you know,
she liked her life.
A decade or so later, we were doing the same thing to them.
Wow.
So it's more. So like, here's my thing. Like, I'm not certain that I agree with the idea that these people are like brainwashed and they're in third world conditions and they cannot envision a beautiful world, because I think there's a lot of beauty in the third world, and I think there's a lot of ugliness in the first world.
Yep.
You know, and this is a moment where, you know, I go out of my way to lose subscribers, but like there isn't systemic abortion in the third world.
Right.
There isn't. We're going to systemically rid our society of Down syndrome kids, like what's happened in Iceland. There isn't more black babies are aborted than born in 2013 and 14 consecutively, respectively, in the third world.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ugliness.
Yeah.
And unbeautifulness in the first world.
Yeah.
That does not happen in the third world. So it's kind of like this idea that, because we're in the first world, that we have a superior sort of way of life than these people, and they cannot imagine anything beautiful. And I'm like, I don't know. I think there's things that they have that we don't, and vice versa, and we could actually learn from each other. Because at the same time, they don't systematically abort their children or whatever, but at the same time, a lot of these children die early because of the lack of technology.
Yeah.
And so, like, if we could learn from each other, that would be the best of all possible worlds. Go ahead, what are you gonna say?
Well, some of you know, like, it took me a little while to get pregnant with Selah, and then once I got pregnant with Selah, after that, like, I didn't get pregnant for 9 years. Like, I got pregnant and then I had a miscarriage. So it was like a big, long, whatever. And a lot of times I felt very misunderstood by people locally, and then I actually had bumped into a Muslim girl, and when I was talking to her, she was like, she got it. Like, she totally understood, like, the feelings as a woman that you have when you really want children and you're not able to have children. And, God's blessed me now. I've got 5, because when we got together he had 3, but it was a long, hard path. And like I see what you're saying. Like, in America, it's just like we've got, I don't know what it is. We're okay to, it would be better if, I think that now people are going to get upset, but I think that it would be better that disease were to take our children than them be taken by the hands of their own mothers.
100%. And again, as I've always said, most of the post-abortive girls that I've dealt with said if their significant other
had been supportive,
then they would have made different decisions. So I have a hard time saying at the hands of their mothers, even though the mom is walking into the clinic, there's always generally some scummy dude who refuses to take responsibility for his actions, who shoves her into the clinic.
I saw that
physically or otherwise. So like my point is to like, I see what they're saying, because there are, I was like, had kind of like a 1,000-yard stare like a couple hours ago, and you were like, what are you thinking about? And I said the world, and I didn't want to talk about it, but I was thinking about this specific instance in Syria at the height of the whole attempt to take over Assad, and these kids about Dorian's age and younger had joined Jabhat al-Nusra, and then they defected from Jabhat al-Nusra and joined basically ISIS in the prototypical stage of ISIS. And so they caught these people and they walked them. It's not a video. It's not on YouTube, but I saw it. I had to see the video for whatever. But they walked, and it wasn't just kids. I mean, it was like grown people, whatever. But there were 2 of them, and one specifically, couldn't have been more than 14. They lined them up on the wall, and they're talking to them, and da-da-da-da, and why did you leave on this show, yada yada yada, and so
they joined this movement.
They joined Jabhat al-Nusra,
and then they changed their minds and tried to get out of it.
And then they jumped onto ISIS because ISIS was more Islamic, or strict in the Sharia, or however you want to say it, and. So what ended up happening is these guys started, they were fighting Assad, but then what happened was you had the FSA, which was the Free Syria Army, which is a secularist group, and then you had Jabhat al-Nusra, which is kind of like Al-Qaeda-ish, and then you had ISIS, which was Al-Qaeda in Syria or in the Levant or whatever, and then they broke off because they were too brutal. So what ended up happening is the Al-Qaeda group, the ISIS group was saying, hey, this FSA group, Free Syrian Army, these guys are secularists. They're going to bring democracy over here. We don't want that. So they stopped fighting Assad and started fighting each other to get the supremacy. And so, in the midst of that milieu, of course, if you had a crystal ball, you jump on with ISIS because they started getting numbers, they started winning news because they were so brutal, people were scared to death of them, nobody wanted to fight him. So this kid jumped from Jabhat al-Nusra to ISIS. And Jabhat al-Nusra was still what we would consider terrorists, but they were terrorists-like compared to ISIS. So this kid and a couple of people defected from Jabhat al-Nusra and went to, whatever. And it's just like, as I see my Dorian grow, and then the other part of it was the whole Gallagher situation with the Navy SEAL, where they're posing with these dead bodies, and some of these are kids, you know. And so it's difficult. You know, when I first saw it, I was like, shit, man, you know, you obviously went to the wrong Jama'ah, you joined the wrong group. I mean, you know, it's war, it happens. But then when I start to think, when I see my son, and he's getting his little growth spurt, and he's taller than me, and I'm like, man, he could have been on one of those technicals, and he could have been, you know, and so they just, you know, lined him up and, you know,
yeah, I kept thinking about that. It's making me sick in the shower.
You know, and look, it's like you said, I have a very, very hard time judging any of the people over there in any of those situations. You don't know what that kid did. Some of these kids,
and you don't know what those men have been.
Some of these kids are brutal. I saw, you know, there was this one kid in Mexico that was like a serial killer. He was like 11 years old. You know what I mean? So like, so you know, I mean, and he did some pretty terrible. Like, I'll say this: ISIS got their idea of video beheadings not from Muhammad. They got that from the Mexican cartels. The Mexican cartels started that stuff in the late 70s, early 80s. Oh. And chainsaws and indescribable evil shit. So like, so all you see is, and you kind of, I'm in the room with other people, and like, I know I'm being propagandized. Like, oh, look at these people. Look what they did to this 14-year-old kid. Right. But that 14-year-old kid has some bodies on his weapon, for sure. Mm-hmm. For sure. And, you know, the whole child soldier thing, these guys are very malleable. And if you look at some of the earliest, you know, the Battle of Badr, for example, it was kids that went around to try to find Abu Jahl and kill him. So it's ingrained in the militant wing of Islam that kids were part of these important battles.
Yeah.
And so it's very, very difficult. And so, like, you know, so you always have this, like, so he's right in the sense of, like, people being brainwashed or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the only thing that kind of makes me go, well, wait a second, like, are Americans not brainwashed? Like,
oh, yeah.
we and I'm saying we, because we went into Iraq and let's go to Iraq. And it was all bullshit. It was all bullshit. And then they changed the narrative on us, and most of us just went along with it. It was, WMD, and then it became, we're going to be here as liberators and hearts and minds and bring democracy to the Middle East, and that's better for America. They completely changed the narrative on us, and we just kept going with it, and we let these people kill 1 million civilians. So, you know, like, everybody's brainwashed. Everybody. That's why, you know, when we talk about homeschooling and they're like, you're going to brainwash your kids. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Because either I'm going to do it or the secularist over there in the public brainwashing institution is going to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not mad at them for that.
I feel like saying brainwashed is an extreme word to use.
Right.
It's not. There is actual legitimate brainwashing that goes on. You know, when you'll see, like, they'll sit the person and they put those films before them, or like what they were doing with the kids during with like Hitler. Remember, he was like taking them all into school, and like they were trying to get them into a certain mindset, and like that to me is like brainwashing. But teaching your kids what it is that's important to you and your belief system is not brainwashing them. I can see some parents force their children into their belief system and force them into certain things, but still it's not brainwashing. Brainwashing, it's like you've cleared their mind and you know what I mean? Like, I don't see it like that.
Those types of the Clockwork Orange stuff where you sit somebody down and make them watch stuff for hours and then is proven to be not very effective. The most effective form of brainwashing is subtle brainwashing, because you automatically have a defense mechanism when somebody's trying to impose their belief system on you. People across the board, even kids have. But if you do it in a subtle way, then, like, for example, 9/11 happened, and then, you know, a couple months later, Black Hawk Down is released.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you talk to anybody in any military community post 9/11, Black Hawk Down was massive.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, to this day, that movie, I basically memorized that movie. Single shot on the engine blocks. Oh, nice. Oh, okay. What's this? Another taxpayer funded Delta Safari? Oh, well, enjoy your meal, sir.
I've never even watched it.
This guy, you know, walking around with his safety on. This is my safety, sir.
Yeah, you've said that line so many times.
Like, I'm out of ammo, Sanderson. I'm out of ammo. Like, I know that movie from start to finish. Like, so my point is, like, and I agree with you. I mean, anybody that like actually sees us with our kids, like, we're the most.
They'd be like, you need to implement some brainwashing.
Right. We're the most unorthodox parents of all time. Like, like if you go to Middle America and watch the Democratic debates, like, you can see clearly they think for themselves. Dorian looks at me and goes, "Father, your porn, their open border stuff is ridiculous and it's silly. He's not a pacifist." Like, I agree with you. Like, we don't brainwash our kids. Like, we expose our kids to all different types of views and different religions and whatever. And just had them watching a Krishna cartoon a couple months ago. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I agree. But the idea that, like, oh, these third world people, they're just brainwashed and they can't see any beautiful world, is, I'm like, seems a little bit ethnocentric or maybe even geocentric to me. Like,
yeah, no, I see what you're saying on that.
No. Like, these people enjoy the way that they live. Just because they don't have the internet, well, I mean, they do now. Just because they don't have all the stuff that we have and all the advances that we have, sure, but they still enjoy it. And yes, we could go over there and teach them about antibiotics and yada, 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 and help them and say, hey, the vast majority of Sahih Hadith come from Aisha, and Aisha was, Muhammad said over and over again that she was his favorite student. So there, what my point is, there's a way to Islamically say we should educate women. You see what I'm saying? Like, Aisha, even Aisha was Muhammad's wife, and she was very, very, very important in the development of the Islamic mind, at least Sunni Islamic mind. Obviously, Shia would the other way around. So, like I get it, right? Like, there's ways to go and say, hey, woman, but the difference is it would be from the perspective of their own culture. Instead of saying, well, our women can go to school and our women can work and they become doctors and your women are inferior. Look, she's in a hijab. And there was this one girl, I'll never forget it. She was on the Senate floor and she was in a burqa and she just pulled this stunt like, oh, these women are being oppressed and da-da-da-da-da. It's like, that bullshit is the reason why we can't reach these people. And we're not going to take the time to, like, figure out, like, how we can communicate to these folks in their language instead of being the Western saviors or the white savior that come in and advance them and whatever. Like, you can make a fiqh argument. You can make an Islamic argument for why women should be able to read and why they should be able to drive and things like that. Like, there's ways of doing that, and there's conversations in the Islamic world about doing that. But all we see is, Taliban is, the Taliban is one group of people that have one certain type of ideology who are not universally recognized, even in Afghanistan, even among themselves. But, like, so that's my only thing. Like, I get what he's saying because it's true. Like, there's a lot of it that's true. Like, what motivates a 14-year-old to pick up a Kalesh and do these horrible things? You know what I mean? Like, obviously they've been brainwashed, to believe this stuff and to act a certain way.
Well, I still don't think it's brainwashing.
What do you mean?
Like, if a 14-year-old grabs it, Dorian is 14 and he absolutely could make a decision that he thinks is the right one. Like, picture Johan at 14. Like, Dorian would never put himself in that situation. Johan is 11. Well, yeah, he's 11. And picture him at 14. Like, if he had it in his head that it was the right thing for him to do.
Yeah, I don't think you could use our kids as a example for that, because I've gone out of my way to introduce a bunch of contrary views to them since they were very small. Like, when we were in the car, Dorian was 6. He says, how do we know Christianity is the truth? I was like, man, you better do some reading. You better figure it out. Like, at that point, as a good Christian parent, I'm supposed to spoon feed that, but I wouldn't. Yeah. I said, hey, you got to figure that out, bro. So, like, most Christian parents are not going to do that. They're going to pull the car over and hell and So I don't think we can use our kids, but I do think that if there's a kid And he's born and raised before he could even talk that jihad and shaheed and shahada and all that stuff is like the way to enter paradise, and then everybody that's outside of your little Islamic interpretation is a kafir or a munafiq or whatever, and orange to kill them all, and and if that's all you hear, and you're not exposed to anything.
That's true.
And like we go our way to show our kids when unbelievers or whatever do good things, and we talk about the good things. We talk about the good in other people's religion, so that
that's true.
They don't have this view of humanity that everybody who's not a Christian is just like the scum of the earth.
Right.
So I do think that there are people that absolutely brainwash their kids. Like I think you were brainwashed.
What?
Absolutely.
Are you serious?
100%.
What? Why?
What? You're a much different person now than you were when I first met you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
I know that I am.
You thought it was sinful to portray Jesus as black or any sort of color. Well, where did you get that from? Because you were an independent thinker? Like you were obvious, clearly you were I've been, look man, I was like after 9/11, I was completely brainwashed. Like you have no idea. So like I don't, it's so weird. So, but that's my point. It's like a brainwashed person doesn't really know it. So So it's one of those things where it's like, to me, this guy's view of the society indicates that he's been brainwashed to a certain degree. I don't want to say, like, how many of these people actually know? Like, how many of you met and talked to and know? A lot of these guys are like, I love Afghanistan, and I love the way that it is, and I love everything, and I love the mountains, and I love this, and I love that, and yada, yada, yada. I just wish you people would leave us alone.
Yeah.
That's their mindset. And so
I've never spoken to any of them.
And so, like the Westerners, oh my gosh, they don't have and like I said, I think having a hospital or clinic is important, and I think that those advances in the Western world, largely because of Christianity, are good, and that those are things that should be spread. But it depends on the packaging. The packaging is the issue. And so if you can find a hadith or Quranic verses that talk about this and can justify why you want to have this hospital and this school and this traffic system and cars and things like that versus, like you can do that from an Islamic perspective. But if you're and you would be surprised, I've met like very educated who they're just like, we just got to go in there and save them from themselves and It's like you were completely brainwashed, bro. Like and then they like, I don't know why these people are not reacting well to us.
Well, when I used to think about doing mission work, I used to think like, you went over there and you basically, you Americanized them. But I always felt uncomfortable when I would see them in the American clothes.
Yeah.
I was like, that makes me feel weird, but I didn't know why. But,
yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
It's this ethnocentric sort of their own form of brainwashing, but I definitely. So I'm torn because there is a lot of truth to what he's saying, and then there's a lot of irony to what he's saying, and then there's a lot of in my mind, ethnocentrism and Western supremacist presuppositions. That this is, I'm sure, a concept record because he talks about global slaughter. So I'm sure there's probably another song that talks about Western American bullshit and how we've just screwed up the entire planet. I am sure that he's done that. It's just on this particular song that's what we're talking about. But anyway, good song. What do you give it?
It's a 9.7.
I'll do that. 9.7 for me. It's a good song. Good discussion. Vin out.
Sori out.
Gone.